you talked about your book a little bit, whole feminism, kind of the secret history that people don't know about.
So this, people always ask like why I wrote the book or how did I end up getting into all that. And it's basically what I just told you guys. So like, here I am, I'm a young adult. You know, I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s that really I had definitely responsibility. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes or do things I knew I probably shouldn't. I did. You know, I moved in with my boyfriend right after high school, but the culture, my family, and even the church I was in at the time all told me, that's fine. At least you're monogamous, you know, at least you're gonna get married, right? That was the plan. We're gonna get married. So really it's no big deal. And I thought, well, I'm not doing what my other friends are doing, which is going to college and going to frat parties. And I had friends that, you know, would go from one guy to the next, week after week after week. And they're partying and they're drinking. And so I thought, well, I'm being pretty conservative. I'm being, you know, I'm not so bad. Until of course that relationship didn't work out and the guy that I was with left. There was no like cheating or nastiness or toxicity. He went through some really intense personal things and we had a baby that was really young and I was pregnant again. And that just, any issues he had, it just magnified them times 1,000 and he left. Not a bad guy. I don't have anything bad to say about him, but that was, it was devastating to me.
Yeah.
Horribly devastating. I was just beside myself, didn't know what I was going to do. So like those things happened to me because I believed this kind of libertarian, Protestant, wishy-washy Christianity of like, yeah, the Bible says, you know, to wait until marriage, but that's negotiable. It was different times, you know, like a lot of bargaining. I did a lot of bargaining with myself as a young person. So as my life unraveled, right, in my early 20s, and I'm like, how am I ending up here? I'm not doing the party girl thing. I'm not being promiscuous. What is going on? You know, I got married again and similar thing happened with that guy. Now I got married to, and we had a child, and he still left. So it was like, I had to look at this and go, okay, what's going on here? The only common denominator between these two men was me. They're total opposites of each other. I did different, you know, took one approach with the first guy, a different approach with the second guy, and ended up in the same position. Why? Right? So I had to really look at myself, how I was thinking about the world, what things about me are attracting me to a certain type of guy, those kind of things. And you have to look at your worldview. You have to look at, okay, what are my moral standards? And how did I end up here? So that was kind of the beginning of me looking around and going, I don't think we're doing things in a very efficient manner. Like I had to bring my first daughter to daycare when she was like 3.5 weeks old so that I could go back to work. And I hated it. I hated it. I cried. She cried. It was really upsetting. Suddenly I didn't give a crap about my job. I thought I liked my job. But when you have a baby and you want to raise your baby, you don't care about your stupid job. At least I did. And I remember thinking, like, why do I bring her to a different random woman who takes care of her all day doing what I want to do so that I can go work for this company, pay their taxes, pay the daycare provider. And I was like, who came up with this system? This is so dumb. You know, I'm like, I'm young and I'm voicing this to the Christian conservative women around me. And they're all telling me, this is how we do it now. This is normal. You'll get used to it. And I was like, I don't want to get used to it. This is stupid. So I think that was like the starting point for me of going, why do we do things this way? And over the years, I started like reading and looking into more and more like this women's liberation stuff, this feminism stuff, this idea that all the moms need to be working, this idea that we can't, the model of dad working and providing for the family is somehow bad and oppressive, right? Because that's what you're told. So I just started kind of looking into that and reading, and I'm somebody that just likes to dig and go down rabbit holes, and that's what I did. And I found lots of crazy things. I start digging into the history and going, where did this come from, right? And I think I did something that most people don't do, and understandably so. I started reading the writings of feminists. Look, it's a dirty job. Somebody has to do it, right? Nobody wants nobody wants to do this boring, dull homework of reading
Yeah.
feminist writing because it's just as awful as it sounds. It's as bad as you think. But I started finding this, first of all, that a lot of the history was wrong, like I said, that women did have a lot of rights, that women weren't the ones that demanded suffrage. Women, this didn't come from women like we're told. It wasn't this grassroots groundswell of women who just, in the late 1800s, they looked around and they went, oh no, we're oppressed and we've had enough and we're going to march until we get rights and we're going to demand it, but that's kind of the impression we're given.
Yeah.
And it turns out, like I started to find that there were anti-suffrage groups made up of women, and that those groups had more membership in them than anti-suffrage groups had.
Wow.
And I thought, that's interesting. So, well, why? Why were they in an anti-suffrage group, and what was that about? So I started reading like their newspapers, their encyclicals, and they actually had debates, believe it or not. There were debates between anti-suffragettes and suffragettes, women debating. I thought, first of all, I thought that women were chained to the stove and not allowed to talk in public,
Yeah,
and that they couldn't do any of these things. Yet here they are in the 1800s having, newspapers, having meetings, having organized groups, having public debates with each other. That doesn't really fit with the oppression narrative, huh?
Yeah.
What else is wrong? So I started digging further back and just found all of this historical evidence that's right there in these women's own words that they penned themselves, saying, look, we have a very privileged position under male suffrage, under patriarchy. We're actually the main benefactors under a patriarchy, not the men. And they would write about the problems they could foresee with changing that. That they felt it would turn husbands and wives against each other, that a house divided couldn't stand, that they would lose their moral high ground as a non-political group, that they didn't want to be drafted, that they didn't want to be subject to a lot of the horrors and the dirty and difficult things that men do in the world on behalf of their wives and children. And I found that I just thought that their reasoning was very solid, very rational. It wasn't emotional, and that the other side was actually very irrational and revolutionary minded. It was like this revolutionary spirit in the feminist side. So I dig further into the feminist side and find that they openly thought of Lucifer as their liberator.
Oh my.
and they wrote about this. And these are women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Matilda Joslyn Gage, like some of the greats of the suffrage movement. And I found a book that's actually a PhD thesis by a professor in Stockholm named Per Faxneld, and you can buy his book on Amazon. He turned the thesis into a book. It's very big, it's very dense, and he's actually an occultist himself. So he writes about this from the view that it's cool and it was a good thing. However, he and I come to a lot of the same conclusions actually about it. And yes, these women thought, they identified as Christians, okay, because they were like these radical reformer Protestants, but they would say, actually, no, we think that the old Christianity, the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, they got everything wrong. They're patriarchists, right? So they didn't really give us the word of God. They gave us nonsense. And it's crazy because they're very Gnostic, very Luciferian, and they saw Lucifer as the liberator of women. They rewrote the Bible from a feminist perspective. We're talking 1895, you guys. Yeah. 1895, there's 38 women that get together and rewrite the Bible from a feminist perspective, take out all of the patriarchy stuff they don't like, take the blame of Eve in the garden completely away and place it all on Adam and the serpent, just basically rewrote the Bible. Wow. Now, in 1895, this was so popular. It had several reprintings and was a bestseller. And you can still buy it right now on Amazon to this day, The Woman's Bible. And it was profoundly influential. Like a lot of you guys who, if you are still in a Protestant church, you probably have no idea how much this book influenced the Protestant churches in America from 1895 on. Incredibly important, and almost no one's ever heard of it. So it was just things like this that as I'm reading it, I'm going, wow, I got to put this out there. Like, people deserve to know this. I wish I had known this, especially for for Christian women. I think it's really important to know where these ideas come from, who propagated them. So the book goes into funding and like which groups pushed the ideology, how they got Americans and people in the West to accept it, and that sort of thing. And it goes all the way back to ancient times and like pagan occult worship, witchcraft, and how feminism is like deeply, deeply rooted in that stuff too. There's some people who get a little mad. I have a couple of negative reviews from Protestants who feel I was very unfair, or even some Catholics who feel I was very unfair. But I invite people to check the source material, to, you know, critique the book if you think that I'm wrong. And so far, I've actually had like lots of academics contact me and be like, wow, this is really crazy.
Wow.
You know, they approached the book hoping to debunk it and found that actually I was correct. So
wow.
It's done really well. It's gotten way more popular than I ever thought. I thought maybe my dad would read it. And that's about it. It's done really well, and I hope that it is changing the narrative and the thinking and breaking, because right now standpoint theory and women's studies departments have they're total gatekeepers of the history. You will never hear anything about feminist history except what is filtered through a university women's studies department and the people who come out of those departments, who basically have a stranglehold on the propaganda arm of feminism and telling you what they want you to know about it, and not like the full history.
Yeah. When you bring this to people, do most people, it's kind of like a hard pill to swallow at first, like some of these feminists, like, oh wow, this is really bad. But then there's probably some of them that are say, oh, this is a good thing, like the cult's great and everything.
I have a small following of witches who love my book, because they think that I'm giving them the proper credit they deserve for women's liberation. So yeah, there's a few of those. There's a few of them who think that, and there are a few people who get angry, but overall, it's been really well received. Overall, most people who read it are just like kind of mad that they just didn't know this stuff. They're like, why don't we ever hear any of this? Like, I checked on your stuff and it's correct. How could it be that we've gotten an opposite story of how this went down and where this came from? And, you know, like the last chapter of the book kind of goes over the results of this movement, where it has gotten us. Like, if you want to look at statistics and data about, you know, women, children, families, fatherless homes, how women are doing right now and things like that, it's hard to argue and say, oh, feminism was just broadly good, right? The fruits of it are not good either. So mostly people read it and they're like, wow, thank you for writing this, because this all makes sense now. Now I can kind of understand how we got here and why things should probably change, why where we are now is not sustainable and something should probably change. So
yeah, definitely. What would your advice be for, you know, a young woman, besides obviously start with reading the book to shape your worldview, to understand why are things the way that they are? You have to go back in history, just like we do when looking into the Orthodox Church. You know, go back in history and see, you know, which church, you know, Christ founded and which church is like true to those. So what other advice though would you give to like a young woman?
I always say visit an Orthodox church, because that's where the proper worldview comes from, in my opinion. But if let's say you're not going to do that. Like, I'm friends with Tim and Stephanie Gordon, very devout, traditional Roman Catholics who completely agree with me on all of this. They've written their own books. We separately wrote books and came to these same conclusions and found a lot of the same things. So they're not Orthodox, but they see all the same things that I see. And they know that modernist feminist worldview is a disaster for people. So even if you're not going to be Orthodox, yes, read the book, but also, you know, just think about this lie that as a woman, what makes you successful is to be like Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Kamala Harris or one of these, you know, business-minded career women who are competing with men, and why that might not work for us. So like, women today in America, 26% of all adult women are on at least one prescription psychiatric drug.
Wow.
Alcoholism in women has risen since the 1970s when we started pushing women into university, pushing them into the workforce, telling them they're just like men. You need to hold yourself to this male standard and be like the men in your group. And you're a strong, independent woman. You can do anything a man can do, and you can probably do it better. But also, you can be a mom and a wife, and you're trying to cram all these things, be everything to everyone, do everything all at once. And so alcoholism, prescription drug dependence, disordered drug use, rates of anxiety, mental illness in women have all gone up. There's been two really broad-ranging studies done on women's happiness since the 70s. Both of those found that it doesn't really matter what your socioeconomic status is, your education status, your marital status, really across the board, women are very unhappy and they're struggling. They feel overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, and kind of like they can't win no matter how much they can achieve. So, why would that be the case? If women's liberation is so great, why aren't women just over the moon happy and super satisfied and content? When if you go back and look at surveys they did prior to that, like my grandma's generation, it wasn't that way. I actually did an interview with my grandma on my channel where I asked her how because she's 98 years old, you guys. So I asked her, how did you and your friends and your sister feel growing up in the 20s and 30s and 40s? Did you guys feel like second-class citizens? Did you feel oppressed? Did you feel like, there was some boot heel on your neck keeping you down? And she said, no, we never felt like that, especially during World War II when all the men are getting flown off to war.
Yeah.
We didn't feel oppressed. We felt very privileged. And they felt, cherished and taken care of, and they mattered. And if you had children and you were a good mom, that was really venerated and respected. And so they didn't feel like it was so hard to win. They felt like you just be what a woman is. You be yourself as a woman. You do what women naturally do. And if you're a virtuous woman, you're going to be well respected and appreciated by the people around you, and you're going to be fine. So I would say for modern women, it's just look at the people that are idolized. Look at Taylor Swift. Look at Beyonce. All of the women in pop culture, they are hypersexualized. Their power comes from their sexuality. This is why even Jennifer Lopez and Cher, these women are in their 60s, 70s, and they're still trying to be sexy. They're trying to be young and hot forever. And just think about, if you think that's sustainable and going to work for the average woman who doesn't have access to millions of dollars of medical interventions and plastic surgery and all the stuff that those women do to keep that up, it's just wildly untenable, and it's really made most women very miserable and very unhappy. And worse than that, I would say, look at how children are growing up. Look at how kids are growing up now. They're in daycare or public school all day. Most of them, 40% or more of children are born out of wedlock. About half of them don't have their dad in the home, which creates a lot of economic instability. And basically the public schools, which if you guys haven't checked in on the public schools to see what's going on there, that's who's raising the children. Church attendance is abysmally down. The Protestant church is practically dying off. So obviously we're on this collision course with disaster. Birth rates are abysmally low. We've been well below replacement for decades, even though most people commonly think that we still have an overpopulation problem. Yeah. Not true. So it's what are you as a woman? Are you this corporate cog in a wheel? Are you just a man in a skirt suit? Do you really want to live the first half of your life pursuing this dream only to have the second half of your life be your Chelsea handler, where you're just alone ordering Thai food, you're smoking pot to cope, you're taking a couple SSRIs, you're alone, and your corporate job will replace you the minute that you retire or die. Yeah. And that's your life, right? It's not, if you want to have a legacy and an impact and you want meaning, this feminist ethos can't give you that, and it won't give you that. But Christianity, true Christianity, can and does give you that. and you'll have this holistic existence that is much more conducive to your nature as a woman, where you can be the matriarch of your sphere, you're the caretaker, you're very important. Nobody can replace you, right? As a
Yeah.
mother and a wife, you're not replaceable the way you are in the corporate, in a cubicle, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of what I say is like, I think women are taught to really focus on that first half of their life, on trying to be attractive, get a degree, make your money, get your all your material stuff, right? Girls are very into like, oh, I got to get my lips done and my hair
Hmm.
done and my eyelashes and my eyebrows microbladed. At like the average girl now has like thousands of dollars of cosmetic upkeep.
Yeah,
It's
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 ridiculous.
super crazy. So
Yeah.
you're focusing on this plastic like um, projection of yourself as a woman, and you're in this competitive male sphere, and nobody tells women to think about the second half of their life. What are you going to do when you're no longer sexy and hot? What are you going to do when you're older and you need someone to help take care of you? Are you going to be like sustaining your life on your own in your 60s and 70s with no husband, no kids, no family? You're just kind of rootless. You don't have much meaning, and you might love your job. You might have a job you love, but do you want to live to work?
Hmm.
Do you want to live just to work and then die? Probably not.
Yeah.
Um, so I just tell women to like think about those things, think about whether this is really going to make you happy. Look at some of these older childless women who will warn you and tell you. I get messages like this all the time too. I had a lady that said, "I'm sitting here reading your book. I'm 60 years old and I am just bawling. The pages are wet because I'm crying because I fell for this whole thing. Like, I went to college in the 70s. I was part of the feminist movement. I divorced my husband because I felt he was holding me back and that my kids were a ball and chain. And now I'm 60 years old and I'm alone in my apartment and I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's too late for me." And those are crushing messages to get.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that happen to
Hmm.
women.
Yeah. And the great thing about Orthodoxy is we have all these great women saints too. Like these are really people that we should look up to because they lived holy lives that glorified God. I mean, the Theotokos, Mary, Mary Magdalene, all of these great, Mary of Egypt. There's all these great saints that
Yeah.
have so much wisdom that they are going to be remembered forever. They were mothers, they were martyrs. I mean, this is what men and women should both thrive for. But orthodoxy really does it solves the problem for men and women because it gives
Yeah.
us salvation, but also gives us just going to church. You're going to have a great community, and right now, if you're a woman, the Orthodox Church has a lot of young male converts, and I've met so many amazing guys. And if you want a guy who like actually cares about you, who cares about faith in God, and like wants to have a family, the Orthodox Church is just an oasis for that in this crazy modern world where lies are just running everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the when I when I found orthodoxy, I was like really angry about Protestantism for a while.
Yeah,
I think sometimes it shows, and I don't mean Protestant people, you guys.
yeah,
I Most of my family, most of my friends are still Protestant, and I love them dearly, and I'm not saying they're not committed Christians or that they
hmm,
don't believe. They absolutely believe, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying like this idea that we can just Bible alone. I don't really need a church. I can go if I want the community, if I want the fellowship. But really, all I need is me and my Bible, and I'll just study it, right?
yeah,
It robbed me of so much. So, like, my mother kind of abandoned our family and abandoned me and my kids and just made it clear that she had no interest in mothering or grandmothering. And she's really not been in my life for many years now. And I always feel like if I had known about the Theotokos, if I had had the
hmm,
saints,
yeah,
that would have been life changing for me. It would have been so beneficial for me to have, as a woman, these amazing martyrs and saints and the Queen of Heaven to look to for
yeah,
this female role. It would have
uh-huh,
been so good for me. And
hmm,
I think people are deprived of a lot when
hmm,
they don't have orthodoxy because it truly is the fullness of the faith. It gives you
exactly,
everything you need. It
yeah,
has the spiritual and physical healing that you need.
hmm,
It's got this holistic worldview that makes sense of everything. It gives you community. It gives you a sense of family. So if you're a
Yeah.
person who doesn't have those things, like so many of us in this modern era don't have those things, that's where you can find it. And that's where it really comes from to begin with. So yeah, I really wish I would have known about orthodoxy when I was younger. I think my whole life would have been different.
Yeah. Well, it all worked out in a providential way that because of
That's
your
true.
experiences, you're able to help thousands of other people. So, yeah, I think,
That's true.
all this suffering, it ends up working out for the good. God makes good with whatever bad happens. But what are your future plans? Do you plan to write any more books or just
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When I finished the first one, I was like, I'm taking a break. I'm not going to do anything for like 6 months. And that totally didn't happen. It was like 2 weeks later, I'm already researching because it never ends. So there's a book two coming. It's actually pretty much done. I'm talking to publishers because
Awesome.
self-publishing through Amazon is a nightmare.
Yeah.
There's been formatting issues. There's been issues with the Kindle getting taken down and it's just a nightmare. Trying to do it on your own is pretty tough. So this book is done well enough that publishers are actually asking, for another book. So I'm talking with a couple different ones. I'm going to see, what I think is best to do. And hopefully that will be out this year, I'm hoping. But it's kind of a sequel to the first one. And it's about the Marxist side of feminism and
Yeah.
feminism in Bolshevik Russia and the Eastern Bloc. Because if you think the Western history is wild, wait till you hear what was going on in these places because it's
Yeah.
it's really insane. But it was a lot of the same entities, the same NGOs, the same money,
Hmm.
and really I think a lot of the same spirits behind
Yes.
what happened there as well. And now that Marxist feminist is the predominant form of feminism in the United States, whereas before it was this like more liberal capitalist kind of
Hmm.
version.
Yeah.
So it goes over all of that, and it talks a lot about like how much this impacts people and they don't even know. There are really prominent Eastern figures from this movement that most people haven't heard of. Jay is now talking about Alexandra Kollontai, who is like one of the stars of the book. Because I was like, you got to look into her. She's really crazy. And he
Interesting.
was like, wow, yeah. And she's connected to all these she was insanely powerful and people have never heard of her. So
Yeah.
it's going to cover all of that stuff. There's a lot of writing on my Substack. I'm going to do more of that this summer. And then just I mean, I'm still homeschooling kids. I still have two kids at home. The
Yeah.
older ones are moved
Aw.
out and on their own now, but I still have two at home. So I try to do as much as I can, but they always come first, and Andrew always
Yeah.
comes first. But yeah, I think you're going to see another book. You're going to see more writing, a few more videos. And then, of course, now that I've been on a couple of these larger podcasts, there's lots of
Yeah.
those that want to see me on. So I will get to them as I can when I
Yeah.
have time.
Yeah, that's really exciting. You've got your priorities in the right place. You live in the dream life, getting to, raise your kids, be a great mother, and also spread a really good message, helping other young men and young women. So, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been really awesome to see you and Andrew grow so much. I'm really optimistic about the future of all of us, all this great community that we have. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, this like the Orthodox folks that I have met and become friends with through doing this by far is like my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Getting together with them sometimes in real life or doing
Yeah.
streams with them is like a really great community that we have. So super blessed for that. I mean, this has all been a huge blessing. Not that it
Yeah.
doesn't come with major challenges, it
Yeah.
does, but
Yeah.
we're very blessed and we have a fantastic church parish that we absolutely love. And, to the extent that people support us, we try to support our parish in turn as well. So hopefully that continues and the Lord allows us to, do great things to the extent that we can for the church that has given so much to us in just a short period of time.
Yeah. Exactly.